So the meeting tonight is going to be recorded. Our friends in the library, we want to thank Osterville Village Library. They're amazing. I don't know what our community would do without them. I think I am going to get started. I'd also, well, I should introduce myself. My name is Suzanne Conley from Save Greater Dowses Beach and Osterville. I used to be retired. I also want to thank the Osterville Village Association and John Crow. Without them, we wouldn't even know this was going on. And it was that little yellow postcard so many Osterville residents got in the mail this summer that just horrified us. And we said, what the heck are they talking about? And then we found out, and here we are. So I know we're a few minutes early, but I think it's okay to get started with such a large crowd, okay? Hector. All right. Okay. Want to welcome our representative Kip Diggs over there, who agreed to just come and listen. And I invited a bunch of people we elect to represent us. Kip, thank you very much for being here. Do we have town councilors here? Anyone? Oh, hello. How are you?
Hi, Betty Ludke.
Yes, Betty Ludke. Yep. And thank you so much for being here. Anyone else? I don't see anyone else. Okay. Nope. Which one is it? Did she start the PowerPoint?
So here, turn this on.
I'm not sure she started the PowerPoint. She started. It's a really good PowerPoint, so I want to get it home. Yeah, the PowerPoint isn't started.
It's the AV guy when we need him.
I know we might have to get Cindy back up here. No, that's not working because it's not actually the PowerPoint. I think someone has to get Cindy.
Yeah.
Would someone let me? Can you tell Stacy maybe? Hold on. The best laid plans, right? Well, the next slide I know by heart. We have a steering committee that formed once our group formed. We meet every single week or every other week. We have agendas and minutes, and what we do is we talk about our plans, we strategize, we digest all the latest news about these various projects that are going on, but our complete 100% focus is on Dowses Beach. I wish I had the names up there, but besides myself, there's Stacy Gunther. You may have seen her at the beach with her little dog, Emma, and she has collected, along with Susie McLean and the cooperation of a lot of the shop owners in downtown Osterville. We are now up to 636 signatures on a paper petition to stop the use of Dowses Beach to land these electrical export cables. They've been working really hard to spread the word. We also have an online petition that is on change.org. I looked at it this evening before leaving my home. There were 1,600 signatures there. And one thing I want to say about, well, we'll talk about the petitions in a moment. The other members of our steering committee are Hector Gunther, right here. He'll be talking with you if we ever get this PowerPoint going. And who else? We have Adam Myrick. We have Bob Schulte from Centerville, Susie McLean, our world famous artist who paints Dowses Beach constantly. Where are you, Susie? Right there. You can always see Susie painting seascapes over there, landscapes and seascapes. Who am I missing, Hector? Oh, there she is. Hi. Yeah, we'll get the list up.
Was working. Well, then just do this.
We tried that. There we go.
Okay, just hit the
There we go.
hit arrows.
Yay, thank you.
Just use the arrows, okay?
All right. So the other members of our steering committee are Amy Jasperson, Adam Myrick. Adam's a really good addition. He works in the whole electricity industry, flies around the world, being involved with the electricity industry as it exists today. We have Dr. Gary Peters, and I mentioned Bob Schulte, who's from Centerville, but we love him anyway. We have Paul Sylvester and Steve Fatalia. So those are the folks who work on this all the time. I already mentioned the petitions, and the numbers are just climbing. And one thing I wanted to mention about the petitions that's very significant, this is not just Osterville. Every single village in the town of Barnstable has very many signatures accredited to the petition. That means that people of Barnstable love Dowses Beach. It is a resident-only beach, as you know, but once the summer's over, people from Sandwich come in, people from other surrounding towns come in, they use the fishing pier. I know they're not supposed to, but that's okay. It's a beautiful, beautiful place that is never misused. But I do want to emphasize the fact that we're not just Osterville, it's the entire town of Barnstable. Our Facebook page is always hopping. We've had 2 trolls that bounce them, but other than that, we have 457 people on our Facebook page. That's a pretty good number. My guess is we'll hit 500 before this is all over, maybe even more. And I regularly write to 400, it's now more like 435 people regularly on our distribution list. And I think the numbers really speak to the fact that this area, we named it Greater Dowses Beach. It's not just a beach, it's an estuary, it's a handicapped accessible fishing pier, it's a wildlife habitat, it's a beautiful environment, it's a place people go to exercise. Oh, that advance. You moved it, Hector? That's okay, Hunter. I will signal you. All right. And I want to say this. This is really important because when I talk with folks, especially folks who are in positions of authority, I instantly get a lecture about saving the planet. And if that happens one more time, I think I'll scream, and no one who knows me wants that to happen. We're not climate change deniers. We read the papers. We're smart people. We're educated. We know that the planet needs to be taken care of better. Neither are we opposed to clean energy initiatives. But I do have to, this is a little add-in that I thought about today as I reviewed these slides. There's a tragedy unfolding right now in the oceans, as you all know. I think I've had at least 30 emails from people about the whales washing up on shores in numbers people haven't seen for a long, long time. People are worried that this race to develop and industrialize our ocean is causing this. We don't know, but there are calls for the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management to cease immediately all activity out in the ocean until scientists, biologists can determine what's going on with these whales. So I did want to mention that tonight. However, we're focused on Dowses Beach, And we're not fighting ocean-based energy, wind power. So I just want to make that clear. And finally, we're certainly not opposed to the Clean Water Coalition's or Barnstable Sewer Project, and somehow it's gotten wrapped up in people's minds, like, oh, they have to come in and do this, or we're not going to get a sewer. Hector will talk about that in detail, but I totally understand all the efforts put in to trying to get, especially the Three Bays watershed cleaned up. I have to always ask myself, why was this not the priority of the sewering project? But smarter people than me are, engineering that project. But we do need to worry about what's happened at Three Bays in the same way that we need to worry about what's happening to the Centerville River watershed. I don't know if all of you know this, but Waquacket Lake, Centerville River, Bumps River, and Scudder Bay all drain into the Centerville River, which drains into the greater Dowses Beach area. It's an estuary, and there are laws that protect estuaries. That's the big difference. A straight line beach is one thing, and I'm sorry about the Centerville people who are so upset about, the plans to start the west end of Craigville Beach project. But those are straight line beaches, and like I said, I sympathize. Dowses Beach is not a straight line beach. Okay, Hector. So we have 3 goals. One, and our overarching goal is to prevent. We're not talking about, well, if you do this, will you build us a new bathhouse? We don't want a new bathhouse. We want you to go away. We want to convince the town of Barnstable that dealing with Avangrid renewables is not worth it. And Hector will speak to that. And finally, and these will be the final things I talk about, is to convince the state that there's a better way, because the state has the power to make some sense of all this. I spoke to this a bit already. A barrier spit is a kind of beach that's protected under the coastal zone management laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And that's exactly what Dowses Beach is. It's a barrier spit. And it fronts a dune system and an estuary. This is my favorite slide, even though I don't know if you folks, how many of you went down to Dowses to look at it when that storm hit a couple of weeks ago? You'll see that in 1944, Dowses Beach was 15 feet underwater, and the Dowses summer home floated out to sea. It floated out into the middle of Nantucket Sound. 2 years later, they sold it to the town of Barnstable for a sum of $30,000 for the purposes of a, quote, bathing beach. This was approved by town meeting. In those days, instead of a town council, we had town meeting, and it was a unanimous approval of town meeting to buy that beach for the purposes of a bathing beach. You can see the flooding that happened in 2011, 2021, and this most recent storm. I've lived in Osterville for only 7 years, and I've seen the causeway flooded over at least, I don't know, 3 or 4 times, completely flooded over, disappeared. And I want to thank John Hauser. Is John Hauser here? So, hi, John, how are you? Thank you so much for letting us use your pictures. I asked John if we could use his pictures that he shared with me. Recognize this guy? Yeah. How long has that bird been there, or descendants, whatever? It's probably one of the most beautiful sights you see at Dowses, and we love that great blue heron. Our argument has always been about the environment and the wildlife habitat, first and foremost, as well as human quality of life and accessibility of Dowses. But the residents, the migratory and resident bird species, very important point. There are 2 that are on the really endangered list, like, terribly endangered. That's the least tern and the piping plover. How could I forget piping plovers? However, the 2022 State of the Birds lists 9 bird species that are on the verge of extinction, along with those 2. And of those 9, 6 are well-documented visitors to the greater Dowses Beach area. Okay, so it's not just those 2. As far as I'm concerned, it's all the birds that visit, who live there and who visit there. One of the things I hate, it's a phrase that these companies use, they call it takes. They say, well, you know, we'll do our project and we'll try to mitigate and limit takes. That's kills, okay? That means kills. The fish and the mollusks. Finney's Bay and East Bay communicate with each other all the time. They exchange water. And many of the fish species that make the greater Dowses Beach area home lay their eggs in Finney's Bay, and that water flows back and forth. The mollusks you all know about. I mean, if you walk the beach at all in the wintertime, you see that it's covered with lightning whelk egg sacs. A lot of people don't know what they are, but you know those strings, they look like little discs on a string. Those are the egg sacs of lightning whelk. That area is a huge breeding area for lightning whelk. One species of lightning whelk is very rare. Horseshoe crabs, come on. You know horseshoe crabs use Dowses Beach. It's a favorite molting area. The young horseshoe crabs, they molt multiple times a year and they use Dowses Beach all throughout the year because they molt constantly. Adults will only molt twice a year, but you see those giant shells there all the time. It's a very important place for the horseshoe crabs. And as we all know, horseshoe crabs' blue blood is used by the medical industry. They actually milk them to make certain medicines. I'm not very conversant with it, but they're an important part of our local fauna. The blue crabs that live under the fishing pier, you know about those, right? Osterville is famous for them, and people catch them all the time. There are limits, there's season and so forth, but they live in abundance in this area. Eelgrass, there's been no determination by Avangrid if eelgrass is even there. We think it is, and we're going to insist that somebody quantify it. This is what we're doing. You can't see that, but we are, I promised everyone, we will be there at every step of the permitting process. We are going to haunt them. Right now, they are in what's called regulatory review. That means that they're in front of the Massachusetts Environmental Protection Act. They have submitted a giant document called the Environmental Notification Form, ENF. And there's a MEPA asks for public response to the ENF, which our group submitted. It's a pretty, well, I mean, it's, you know, single space, 7 pages like that. It's pretty comprehensive. But the town of Barnstable submitted a response to the ENF. I want to say this. When we read the town of Barnstable's response, we know how we felt. The town of Barnstable actually wrote in their response to the ENF that they're very concerned about the causeway, because the plan, Avangrid's plan, is to land 3 cables, not 1, but 3, at Dowses Beach, that short little beach, land 3 giant electrical export cables that will come up under the parking lot. There will be 3 large vaults there in which they manage these cables. They split them actually. So each cable is then split into 3, and then they're going to run up the causeway. I tried to get an answer to this, but I haven't been able to reach someone from the town. In the town, talked about the duct bank with these 9 cables running the top causeway, and I'm like, that can't be true. Nobody would ever get out there again. I am pretty confident that what Avangrid plans to do is to trench the causeway. The trench will be 9 feet wide. I think it's 8 feet deep. That causeway that I showed you all the flaming pictures of, they want to dig a trench there. I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm not. Once they get to the culvert, where the water gets exchanged between East Bay and Finney's Bay, the 3x3 or the 3x4 duck bank will actually spread out, and they'll have 12 of these cables hanging off the culvert. And what the town said was, we're very concerned the culvert will not be able to withstand the weight of the concrete duck bank. What would happen is, right, the culvert would collapse. The causeway risks, I think, and this is my opinion, but I'm pretty sure there are a lot of people worried about this catastrophic failure of the causeway. If that were to happen, no one would ever go out there again. I can't imagine the town would suddenly say, let's rebuild the causeway. Okay, so that's one of our main concerns. And the other concern, because we are interested in the environmental impact, is what would happen if those two bays somehow had to deal with this. I'm saying environmental catastrophe. And this isn't me making this up. This comes right out of the town's response to the ENF, and the way you get to the ENF, I'm giving you all homework now, okay? Go to MEPA's site, MEPA, look up New England Wind 2 connector. And their ENF will be there, as well as every single response made by any group or individual to their ENF. And I would say, how many responses were there? Like a couple hundred responses. And most of them, by far, most of them don't want this to happen. I will say the ones that were in favor of this would make the climate change argument. Like, we need to save the planet, the climate's changing, we need to do this. If they want to build wind farms, that's one thing. We don't want them to wreck this environment. So, by the way, I shouldn't digress, but here I go again. It's a little confusing, the names that are floating around in this company. This company is actually owned by a Spanish firm. Well, no, let me back up. The Spanish firm Iberdrola, which is largely funded by the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Qatar, or Qatar, as some people say, owns Avangrid, which is based out west. Avangrid owns Avangrid Renewables. Avangrid Renewables is the company that's doing 50% of Cobos, 100% of the Craigville project that will start next fall. Where's Bob Schulte? Next fall, Bob? The target. And this one is supposed to start in fall of 2025. That's why we got in very early, and we're fighting that at this stage, not waiting for them to be to get all their permits done. Okay. They call, let me see, they told the feds this is called the Craigville and the Dowses Beach project are called Park City Wind LLC, which is really confusing. They said to the feds, Craigville is phase 1, Dowses is phase 2. They told the state it's called, the part where they run the cables is called New England Wind 2 connector. So there's a lot of different names for all this stuff. I think that's confusing. I wonder if that's on purpose, but anyway. Okay, we're working with media outreach. I've been on the radio a few times, I've been told. And we're working, of course, we were, with the Cape Cod Times patch, and we do social media as well, especially Nextdoor, Facebook, and so forth. And personal contact. And I have to say that all the members of the steering committee have been fabulous with everybody they know, so that people know what's going on. Okay. Did he fall asleep? Oh, this is you. Oh. Let me introduce Hector Gunther.
Thanks, Suzanne. I'm Hector Gunther. I'm a year-round resident of Osterville. I do a fair bit of volunteer work in the town. Pardon? Speak up. I do volunteer work in the town, including part-time, and like Suzanne, I thought I was retired, but spent a lot of time on state Greater Dowses Beach. And I'm going to spend a couple of minutes talking about numbers, the financial benefits to the town. My background, by the way, is I worked in Manhattan for some very large banks, and I worked with multinational companies around the world. So I know how big companies work and the games they play. And so I'm going to address the numbers a little bit. So Suzanne mentioned that there are 3 projects. There's the project at Covell's Beach called Vineyard Wind. The second project to start at Craigville Beach is Park City Wind, and then Commonwealth Wind, which is half again as large as the other 2, will come into Dowses Beach as the development grid has its way. So our counterparty in each of these cases, the town's part counterparty, is the limited liability company. So how is the contract between Barnstable and each of those 2 companies, the first 2 companies, evidenced? Well, it's evidenced by a host community agreement. And it's a legal binding contract that the town of Barnstable, Mark L. signed first with Vineyard Wind, LLC, I believe in the fall of 2018. And then in the second HCA, host community agreement, was signed with Park City Wind in the latter half of 2022. And each of those agreements spell out the arrangements between the town and the developer of these projects. Now, in the host community agreement, in the statement of purpose, the town says, and this is a quote, the town says, the town wishes to support the Vineyard Wind or Park City Wind project in launching this important project, which will bring significant revenue to the town of Barnstable. So keep that thought in mind, significant revenue. So let's talk about how significant it is. So this slide is headed financial incentives. So the important thing to know is that we're basing our analysis of Commonwealth Wind and the numbers the revenue that will accrue to the town, assuming that the financial deal is very similar to the deal negotiated with the Covell's project and the Park City Wind project. Based on those 2 projects, and assuming that the financial deal is comparable, and again, the money that the town will receive will be received over 25 years. In today's dollars, if you evaluate those 2 deals and apply them to Commonwealth Wind, the town would get $5.5 million to $16.5 million over 25 years in today's dollars. It's, if you think about lotto, right? Somebody won $1.5 billion in lotto, somebody up in Maine. And the stated prize was $1.5 billion. But most lotto winners, as you all know, and anybody who's won, most people take the money up front. Well, that $1.5 billion in today's dollars is less than half. It's about 700 million. So that's the concept that I'm trying to put across here, that it's today's dollars, 5.6 million to 16.4 million over 25 years. And those cash flows are comprised of HCA payments, fees that the developer agrees to pay the town over a 25-year period. That's part of the money that comes to the town. And then the balance of it is property taxes. And the property taxes are on the infrastructure and the substation that the developer installs. And the town assessor will determine the value of those property taxes. So, back to this term, significant revenue. So let's talk about significant revenue. Let's compare it to the cost of the CWMP, the Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan. As Suzanne said, I hear a lot that we need this project to pay for the CWMP. And I'm sure people out in the audience have heard that too. Well, The 5.6 million to 16.4 million amounts to, as it says on the slide, 0.4% to 1.2% of the cost of the CWMP. In other words, very small amount, pittance. Now let's talk about the Commonwealth Wind, the company's budget to build this project. The number that I've heard and they've disclosed in their financials is about $5 billion. They are paying out, if this scenario bears out, they'll pay out 0.1% to a third of 1% of that $5 billion to the town over 25 years. Again, significant? I wouldn't call that significant. And then a third comparison is you take the town's annual budget. These days, it's around $230 million, give or take. Multiply it times 25 years, you have $5.7 billion. And then if you compare the today's dollars for this project, it will amount to 1/10% up to 0.29% of the town's budget. Again, I think, I wouldn't call that significant. I would call that cheap chump change. And it's given the precious nature of Dowses Beach and the possibility of irreversible damage and the possibility of losing access to it if the causeway is disrupted. I would just say, Avangrid is getting a cheap deal. And if something goes wrong, and I'll get to this in a minute, they're going to have limited liability to make us whole. So, considering all the risks, is it worth it? And I would say, and we would say, no. So let's just talk about some of the risks. And, Suzanne touched on some of these. I'll just talk about them in the financial terms. So the environmental risks to the habitat, the causeway, and the aquifer. The aquifer is, you can think of that as the town's drinking water. So let's imagine a scenario where some part of this project contaminates the town's drinking water. How do the remediation costs for that, if you could even remediate such a thing, how would that compare to what the town might receive over 25 years? If any part of Dowses Beach is damaged, especially the causeway, we've talked about the causeway a lot, what's our recourse? Who will pay? It's not clear. It's not clear. And a second category of risks would be economic risks. And here, any people who own businesses here in Osterville expect and can reasonably anticipate a lot of disruption and possibly permanent damage to their businesses, especially in downtown Osterville. Property values. What will be the impact of this project on property values? It's a big unknown. I think I've talked to people who argue both ways, but I think the risk is more on the downside than the upside, especially during the period of construction, the 3 years and the 7 miles of cable that needs to be laid through the town. A third category of risks is what I call contractual risks. If drinking water or environmental damage occurs, who do we look to make us whole? Our counterparty, as I said earlier, is Commonwealth Wind LLC. There's nothing in that company. There's nothing in that company except this project. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. If we have a major hurricane, and there's a lot of, I read that hurricanes are going to become more frequent. I think when we bought our house here, I was told the last big hurricane was 1992 Hurricane Bob. And there's a reasonable chance, probably better than an even chance, that we'll have a Category 1 or Category 2 hurricane over the life of this project between 2026 and 2050. And if that happens, you can imagine there are 88 turbines southwest of Martha's Vineyard There are 88 ocean platforms on which those turbines sit. Imagine a Category 1 hurricane coming through, destroying some of the turbines, impacting others. Play the scenario out. The company is no longer able to generate power. They're not selling power into the New England grid. They have no revenues with which to pay the town. They stop their payments to the town. What do we do then? And then, of course, the ultimate recourse that a company like this has is they file for bankruptcy, protection from their creditors. And then the town of Barnstable becomes an unsecured creditor. Get in line, get whatever you can out of this company. The fourth risk, execution risk, is related to the third. Avangrid is a public company. As Suzanne said, it's 80% owned by a big Spanish utility company, and Iberdrola is the fourth largest electricity company in the world. Commonwealth Wind is a fourth-tier limited liability company that is ring-fenced from Avangrid, which is its parent company. In other words, the parent company is very well insulated and well protected if something goes wrong down at Avangrid, three levels down. And if something goes wrong, the parent company would be within its legal rights to say, it's your problem, Barnstable, it's your problem, Cape Cod. We don't have any legal obligation to fix that. Now, I'm told that there is some possibility that Avangrid Inc. will provide some guarantees. And Ken Kimmel said this at the Park City Wind meeting last week. I'll believe it when I see it. There's a possibility of insurance, escrow accounts, bonds, that sort of thing. And I assume that there will be some protection. But when push comes to shove, if Avangrid puts Commonwealth Wind into bankruptcy, we're up the creek without a paddle. Another thing about Avangrid's Inc., the public company, their core business is regulated electric and gas utilities. They operate in 4 states. Massachusetts is one of them. Maine, Connecticut, and New York, I think, are the other 3. That's their core business, 85% of their revenue. They have a little bit of onshore wind out west somewhere, but they have never built, developed, operated, or maintained an offshore wind project. This is a brand new business for them. It is a new venture. It is a startup with all the risks that are entailed with a startup. I think I would sum up the risks by saying that, Dowses Beach will potentially be a guinea pig for the largest offshore wind project ever built in the U.S. The project will be built by a newcomer to the industry, a new entrant. And if anything goes wrong, Barnstable, the town of Barnstable, the taxpayers, we will have very few options with which to protect ourselves, to make ourselves whole, never mind to recoup some of the environmental damage. So I think, when you look at it in the cold light of day and look at what this company is and how they're proposing to go about this project, and the fact that they've never done one before. Yes, they're starting Vineyard Wind, so maybe by the time they get to Commonwealth Wind, they will have had a little bit of experience, but it's a new business for them. And they've never done it before, and we'll be the guinea pigs if anything goes wrong. So in sum, it's a risky business. Suzanne, I think did you mention the power purchase agreement? So
No.
The Commonwealth Wind back in April negotiated and signed what are called power purchase agreements with the 3 Massachusetts utilities who will purchase the power if it's ever generated by Commonwealth Wind. It's National Grid. What are the other 2? Sorry, Eversource, and then the old Fitchburg Gas and Electric. I think it's called Unitil. Those are the 3 parties that signed this agreement, and it's a 250-page contract. It was not negotiated overnight. It was probably took a year to negotiate. They signed it in April. Well, in August and early September, they had an investor call with their stock investors. And they said on that call that, oh, by the way, this power purchase agreement doesn't work for us. Project is no longer financially viable. They want a do-over. Now, I don't know what more to say about that than that the fact that they're trying to get out of these PPAs, that has put the Massachusetts DPU in a world of hurt. They've been going back and forth. On December 30th, DPU said the power purchase agreements are good, and we believe that the utilities in Avangrid should adhere to the agreements. And Avangrid is currently evaluating its options. My prediction is they'll wind up in court. But again, from that experience, one has to wonder, if they're willing to abdicate a contract that they've negotiated in April, 4 months later, how are we to gauge Avangrid's, ability or willingness to perform all its contractual obligations to the town of Barnstable, among others? So I just put that question out there. I'm told that that it is a reputable company, but it's a big company and they want to control their risks. And I question, can they perform? Or will they perform if push comes to shove, if something goes wrong with this project? Thank you. Turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Hector. He's done so much work just trying to analyze the finances of this. I reviewed my notes. I meant to show everybody our petition. This is it. Okay. Wait, Stacy. We have 66 sheets with 628 names on the sheets. I also wanted to tell you an anecdote on the Facebook page. One of the trolls wrote, "What are you NIMBY so worried about? They're putting a wire under the beach, big deal. It's going to take 3 months, go, just go away." And so I just want to talk for 1 second about what they're planning to put under the beach. And let me relate, and as I do, let me tell you this little anecdote. We hear from Avangrid, we even hear from officials all the time. What's the big deal? We have lines running from Kelmus Beach that power Nantucket. I spent 18 years vacationing on Nantucket. And yes, great, there was electricity. They said, what's the big deal? Running these 3 cables under Dowses Beach. The old cable that ran to Nantucket from the mainland, as America we used to say over there, runs 35 megawatts. The second cable that they installed in 2006 runs 36 megawatts. Each of the cables, remember that, 35 megawatts and 36 megawatts, right? Each of the cables they want to land at Dowses run 400 megawatts. There will be a total of 1,200 megawatts of electricity running under the beach where our children dig in the sand and in the water where they swim. And there is no study out there that says that's perfectly safe. There are things called electrical magnetic fields. The kind of cables they want to use, they say, oh, they're perfectly safe. It's a new generation of cable. I don't believe they're perfectly safe. They still have fields, the radius of which is 4 feet. That means 8 feet around each one of these cables. You're in that field. I don't know how many of you will try to stop a 9-year-old boy from digging in the beach, right? But anyway, I just wanted to add that little nugget. We were told by a very wise woman who's advocated here on Cape Cod for a long time that we ought to talk about alternatives. So that's what I'm going to do now. 3 alternatives that we want to just throw out there. Avangrid would say, no, we can't do that. No, we can't do that. They already said that, but the alternatives are still there. The first one, Hector, are you still going to help me? Yeah. Awesome. All right. This is from their plan that they filed with the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management which is a bureau of the Department of the Interior of the federal government of the USA. And in this document, they outlined what they call scenario 6. They don't like it, but it's there. And this idea is to jog from the northwest corner of their lease area, which is south of Martha's Vineyard, and run cables, 1 or 2 or 3, as they say, through what they call the South Coast Variant, ending up near New Bedford and Fall River. And they actually did a study and, looked at this. They said, we don't really like it that much, but it's it's an option. Well, it's my least favorite option because all this does is push it down the beach way. I don't like to say to another population, you take the cables. But on the other hand, why does Barnstable have to take all the cables? You know what I'm saying? We said, yes, when they said yes to the Covels project, it was in the newspaper, and, there were people with tears in their eyes. They were so happy that, Barnstable said yes. Well, the people of Barnstable did not know that that was phase 1. They did not know phase 2 was coming. They did not know beautiful, precious estuarine area, Dowses Beach, was going to be invaded this way. Tiny little Dowses Beach with 3 cables, not 1 like at Covels, not 2 like they're planning for Craigville, but 3. That's the first option. Saw this in the paper, Commonwealth Magazine. The power plant that lives on the canal is operating at 40%. This is an old story. I don't know if anything's transpired, if they've closed on this power plant, but someone had the idea, why don't we take these decommissioned and partially decommissioned power plants that were running on coal and that sort of energy and repurpose them so that they have second, greener lives. What a great idea. And that's going nowhere, right? No, we don't want to do that. And to run cables to that plan wouldn't be that hard. They would have the access road, one of the access roads on the side of the canal, right? Instead of neighborhoods. One of the things I read this morning, I couldn't believe, one of their options for not going up the causeway is to tunnel under East Bay. They told the feds that. They did not tell the feds that they're planning to use the causeway. They told the feds we're going to tunnel under East Bay. In what they submitted to the state, and please do your homework, go and read the ENF that's at NEPA. What they said was one of our options is to tunnel under East Bay, but that would mean taking private property that's across the street on East Bay Road and eventually closing down 1,000 feet of that road in both directions. Okay, and they actually wrote that in their ENF, so I want you to look at it. I'm not making this stuff up, right? Anyway, then they go, that's why we want to dig up the causeway instead, which I just think is such an absurd idea that that causeway be dug up to have a giant concrete duck bank put into it. Anyway, there's that sort of option that I don't think has been explored enough. This is the one I like. There's a problem with it. And this is where our group, we are starting to form a coalition, by the way. We're meeting with the folks from Falmouth next week. We've met with folks from Yarmouth. We have the Osterville Village Library. We'd like to get some other civic associations on board with us. And we want to go at the state hard. Because the state, I think, needs to step in and bring some sanity to this whole process. There are 2 approaches to bring in the electricity ashore from wind farms. One is called the unplanned approach, and that's what's happening now. Engineers call it the radial approach. There could be as many as 30 of these cables flung across Nantucket Sound over time. I've heard anywhere between 17 of them and 30 of them, because this is not the only company with a lease, and it's not going to be the last. That's the radial approach. That's called unplanned. That's letting the developers go nuts like it's the Wild West and it's a gold rush. All right, that's what it's like. The planned approach is, this is from a company called Embark, and they're out of Wakefield, Massachusetts. And they advocate for a planned approach, which means they build a platform out there in the ocean that services all those wind turbines and brings the electricity into New England in 3 locations. Brayton Point, which is, do you remember those great big things that they demolished over there in Somerset? What were they? Silos, yes, thank you. They looked like nuclear reactors or something the first time I saw them, but they're silos and they took them down. But the grid, the infrastructure is still there. Mayflower Wind, because the Falmouth town selectmen kind of sent them packing a bit. They told them we'll be back, like, you know, the Arnold Schwarzenegger of companies. But anyway, they're going to Brayton Point now with their project. And Avangrid says we can't do it because we have a different kind of cable. They have HVDC, we have HVAC, and I know more about electrical cables than I ever wanted to know. But anyway, it's still an option. If they would collaborate with Mayflower, they could go to Brayton Point. But what these things are built out in the ocean. They're buried deep out in the ocean. And they take all the power and they bring it to shore. And to me, this planned approach, the reason it's not being done this way is that Massachusetts legislature passed a law that X% of our power has to come from a renewable energy source by 2030. And because of that deadline, all these companies like, we've got to get this done. You know, we have a time frame to do this in so that we'll get the renewable energy credits from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And what we want to say to the state, and I was so happy to hear that our new governor has appointed a climate czar, and we want to get in front of her and say, listen, you have coastal communities all over Cape Cod going, what the heck is happening to our beaches? You know, instead of public beaches in blue economy villages and towns, why isn't Massachusetts stepping in and saying, whoa, hold on, let's think about how we export the energy from your wind farms that aren't even built yet, by the way. And what I would like to say to state officials, and we have one here tonight, Mr. Diggs, what I would like to say is the state needs to step in and bring some sanity to this whole thing. If they're going to go ahead and build wind turbines, let's make sure that you're not ruining villages and people's lives and animals, etc. Okay? So I'm going to ask each and every one of you to please write to the new governor. Okay, there's a lot of people in this room. And if we shower that office with letters from all of you to please consider rethinking how the electricity is exported, because villages and towns up and down Cape Cod are starting to wake up to what's going on. All right. Okay, Hector. This is interesting, and I won't talk forever, so we can get to comments and questions. This chart, it's hard to read up there, but I'll try. That chart on the right talks about overloaded lines. That means that what these folks are doing, running all these power lines across Nantucket Sound, building substations and loading up the Barnstable, the big Barnstable Eversource substation, the number of overloaded lines at greater than 110%, which leads to failures, in a planned transmission would be 6. The number of transmission lines that lead to failure in the unplanned approach is 47. Over on the left there, unplanned scenario overload. See that? West Barnstable, the Boston area, West Barnstable to the west, so Tremont and Falmouth, Tap Paths, Connecticut and Rhode Island, with a planned approach, Mystic, North Cambridge, Woburn, and Connecticut. And I'm sorry about those ones, but you know, look at the difference. The bottom line, look at this on the right. The unplanned transmission system will cost between 1.28 and $2.38 billion. A planned transmission system would cost between 390 and 710 million. Billion versus million. And we're the taxpayers. Okay, so I just thought I would try to advocate for my friend who's very wise, said, put some scenarios out there that aren't Dowses Beach. So those are what I put out there. Is there another slide, Hector? Oh, yeah, this is a great quote. I shouldn't read it, but here I go. Transmission planning is important in order to reach the state's long-term offshore wind goals. Coordinating transmission from multiple projects may lead to considerable ratepayer savings, better environmental outcomes, better grid stability, and may significantly reduce permitting risk. And I will add disruption to wildlife and people and possible damage to our environment. Okay, Hector. Oh, good. That's that.
I just want to emphasize Suzanne's last round of comments. Avangrid has multiple alternatives. They have chosen the cheap and easy way. 3 beaches in Barnstable, one bing, bing, bing. That's the cheapest and easiest way. But they have multiple alternatives, many of which have to do with the planned approach or running cables over to Fall River, New Bedford, to Cushnet, which in many cases they don't have beaches right on the coast. They've developed industrial areas right on the coast where the cables could come in. That's the important point. They don't need to do this project at Dowses Beach. They want to because it's the cheapest and because the town of Barnstable has had its hand out saying we need this significant revenue.
So questions, comments? Yes.
Yeah, I was very struck by your slide about the planned approach, because I've done quite a bit of research on this, and we're familiar with the I think it's the Barrett Group, and there's a professor at Tufts University that has focused his entire career on this. And he likened the approach that we're doing now with, like you said, one here, one here. He said it was just as if you needed a transfusion, and you went to the hospital and they said, well, give me your finger and we're going to put it in through a capillary. And that's what he likened it to, and he studies this stuff. And I read the slide, the Brattle. Yeah, that slide you had was in their presentation. And it makes so much sense. And you're talking about Brayton Point, which used to be the largest coal-fired plant here in New England. Those were cooling towers.
Yes.
That's what they were.
Okay.
The cooling towers that they demolished when they took that plant down. But that's exactly what should be done. And I think it's genius of you to pursue the alternatives, because in the environmental impact report, they have to pursue alternatives. That's the whole point of those reports. You have to do viable alternatives, and then you pick the best one based on any number of criteria. So you need to push that hard.
Okay.
We all need to push that hard.
Could you introduce yourself?
I'm sorry. I'm Betty Ludke. I'm a town councilor for Precinct 3, which is the western part of the county. And I'm not in Osterville, I'm the western part of Hyannis, but we've always been told we represent all of Barnstable. And this is a very critical project. And that's why I came here to listen to what you have. And I wasn't expecting to speak, but when I saw your alternatives and that planned approach, which I have done research on, it makes so much sense to pause and do that. And what they're talking about is you can do, I wish you'd put it up on your Facebook or on your website, that whole Brattle Group presentation, because they're talking about, you put the prices up there and you're spot on that. The onshore prices and the destruction of our grid is going to be absurd. Cape Cod is designed to receive power, not push it. And this substation is just the start. And think of all the horrible chemicals involved in that right on top of our wells in Barnstable. So we need to really push that alternative. And it's a great time with the new governor to say, let's stop, let's do the networking out in the ocean.
Yeah.
And bring this into Wayton Point and Boston and the others.
Thank you so much for saying that. We really appreciate it. There have to be more questions.
It's working.
It's working? So it might be. More questions? Yes.
Within the lifespan of these wind farms, it's really limited at somewhere between 15 and 25 years. Europe has got graveyards of these wind farms all throughout the oceans and seas around Europe. What happens in 20, 25 years to these wind farms and all the wires going underneath these beaches? Is there a plan?
Well, yeah, there's, not to interrupt you, but, they say the lifespan is 25 years. And that if they don't rebuild them on the platforms, they will take them down and they have to remove the platforms down to 15 feet below the seabed. And that's out in the ocean in federal waters. The cables, this infuriates me. But the OEM, BOEM as it's called, has told these companies they can leave the cables in place. And not only that, so you're right about Europe. Every year there's a decline of 4% in the amount of energy that is produced by ocean wind power for the very reasons you cite. The turbines in salt water, they just degrade really rapidly. They have all kinds of problems. This isn't a joke, but what I say to people is they'll be constantly here. It's not just 3 years. Instead of sailboats and ice cream trucks, you're going to see barges right off of Dowses and utility service vehicles in the parking lot. It doesn't matter if it's summertime or not. Dowses Beach will never be ours truly, solely again if this happens. All right. I've read so much about these electrical cables. They constantly break down. They need to be dug up, pulled to the surface, put on barges, cut up, spliced. One of the main reasons they fail, like the ones they say they're going to put at Dowses have 3 conduits each, but there's also a fiber optic cable that runs through it. And the fiber optic cable apparently is necessary to monitor the cables. And the fiber optic cable gets fried by the electromagnetic field inside the cable. So they're constantly repairing. And I read this big article by a scholar in Europe who had written about the newer type cables and what's going wrong with them. And that's what's going wrong with them. So it's just, it's not a wire under the beach. It's going to take 3 months. I'll tell you that. Oh, go ahead.
Dave Moriarty, you want to speak?
Oh, hi, Dave.
Introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dave Moriarty. I'm from Falmouth, Massachusetts. Lifelong resident of Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Been fighting to protect this place ever since I was a teenager. This is the most egregious project I've ever experienced. Yeah, we thought Cape Wind was bad. Jesus. The main thing you need to know is, unfortunately, the government agencies, our elected officials, these LLCs, they're not honest brokers. You can't believe what they tell you. They lie all the time. How do you stop them? You go to every government meeting, you go to every town meeting. Anytime you have a chance to express yourself in a public comment arena, public officials, you have to attend them. You have to send letters to them. You have to join your local cable, public cable. And you have to do show every month. You have to do the work that we pay our government officials to do. You have to educate the community, which they refuse to. And you have to demand meetings. The only reason we got meetings, Mayflower, Falmouth, Massachusetts, because I went to every meeting. And I went to all the selectmen. And every meeting, I would demand that we have a meeting. And I would demand that we got more information. And they could only stall for a year.
Microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. And eventually they had to give us our meeting. And June 8th, guess what they did? They gave us our meeting, and guess what they did? They canceled the project. They said, oh, we're gonna change this project. This is, you know, it was a 24-acre sub plant, and it was AC cable. And so now they realized that it just wasn't gonna happen. And, you know, the problem with these projects is it's just not a good fit for Cape Cod. Okay, this is the tourist industry. Okay, there's always going to be a tourist industry. Okay, it's a fishing industry. It's yachting, it's boating, it's recreation. You know, you don't put industrial projects in international community recreational
Destinations. Yeah.
You just don't do it. Now, we have a new governor. Hey, we've got new people in office. We need to talk to them. We need to demand a meeting. We need to demand that the governor come to Cape Cod. We don't have to go to Beacon Hill. They've done enough for it. We need the governor to come here. We need the environmental, the new environmental change.
Climate czar.
Climate czar. We need the climate czar.
Melissa Hoffer.
Yes, we need them. We're actually, I'm asking that the governor come and the climate czar come, the new climate czar come. We're requesting that you come to Osterville or Hyannis or the community college and please explain what you are trying to do to this beautiful Cape Cod of ours. The Cape Islands, the people of the Cape Islands really need to band together now. Okay, this is it. The line has been drawn. Okay? Every citizen of the Cape Islands needs to call State House. You need to talk to you. How come we can't get any rep to come to these meetings?
Kip Diggs is here.
Well, my hat is off to you, sir. You must be new. I do too.
I get to listen.
Absolutely, absolutely, and let's hope we can get all the reps of the Cape Islands, state and federal, in the same meeting at the college. We can express ourselves and express our concerns to the powers that be, because everybody in this room knows this is ridiculous. Okay?
Yeah.
It's a foolish way to go about it. It's the wrong way. The right approach, if at all you're ever going to do a wind farm, is the latter. You know, you do a single cable and you go into all the industrial areas in the cities that can actually use this power. Now, here's the kicker, folks.
We're gonna have to leave some time.
Uh-oh. All right, I'm gonna get off right now.
All right, no. Steve. Let's have your kicker.
Here's the kicker, folks. Even if they steamroll or shoehorn these cables into our beautiful Cape Cod, right? There's no infrastructure to move the power. They can't even move it, even if they get it here. Barnstable can only push 800 megawatts out. Why are they putting all these extra ducts in all these projects if we don't even have the infrastructure to move the power? Is that ridiculous? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thanks, Dave. I'll see you maybe next week. There is a lot of talk about upgrading substations to push this power, but your comment is right. We shouldn't be pushing power to Massachusetts. Massachusetts should be pushing power to us. Yes.
Would you like to take the mic?
You want the mic?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Yes.
Introduce yourself.
Okay, so hi, I'm Mary Ann. So 46 years coming here now year round. And unfortunately with my father, I saw the hole. We were trying to walk at Craigville. Some of you have heard this. And the hole was literally almost from the ocean floor to the parking lot. And my father was horrified. And he said, what is this? And so the sense of scale is beyond your imagination. If I hadn't seen it, I never would have believed it. And, you know, each wind turbine is getting larger and larger every day. They're the size of the Statue of Liberty. Like, you can't even imagine that size. One blade the size of a football field. So what I did, because I'm the worst public speaker in the world, and I'm so passionate about it, that I actually have a poem too. At some point, I'll treat you to my ode to Dowses Beach. But the point being, I've researched for months now since that happened with my father, and he was denied access to walk there because he pushed, you know, his walker and there was nowhere to go. So that's very sad, but nevertheless, I wrote up 18 points for all of you. If you have, that might help clarify some of this smoke and mirror show that goes on with Big Wind, and I will print them up and put them out at the library. So if you have any questions, that's just a free thing for you. Facts that I have found, you have to dig because they have such a marketing system that squashes down anything negative. So you will try to find an article about Block Island's huge failure and a $30 million cost to the taxpayers. You won't find it. Narragansett Electric going under, you won't find it. But also the weird factor is Orsted, one of their subsidiaries, ended up buying out Narragansett Electric when they went bankrupt after the cables, you know, eroded. So that's a little weird factoid someone who's a legal minded can look into. But the crux of offshore wind power is taming Mother Nature. We're going to go tame Mother Nature. We live by the beach. We are Cape Codders. We know you cannot tame Mother Nature. One turbine in Texas just got blown up by a lightning storm, disintegrated, completely disintegrated. And there's so many facts. I'll try not to bore you now. That's why I put my 18 facts for you.
We have other people want to make comments.
But I want you all to know this. They can only work also in certain wind speeds. You have to know that. And gas and oil have to back them up. But just so that you know, we're not alone in fighting this. This is an important point. The Mass Coalition of Fishermen asked for a moratorium on it. The Save Right Whales Coalition asked for a moratorium. Nantucket Residents Against Turbine has filed a lawsuit against the United States Bureau of Ocean Navigation and Management to block this. And Israel as well, plus many, many more, have filed moratoriums against this. So we're not the only ones saying we're against this. And they want to go up and down the east and west coast. So people are looking at us, Massachusetts, the home of the Minutemen, to see how we're going to respond. So what I don't understand, question to you, Mass Endangered Species Act, Massachusetts Wetlands Act, a 2 3-mile buffer we're supposed to have, and others. Why are those not being allowed? Like, who is doing this? Who is allowing this? I know Biden said by 2030 we have to have this many things, and
So let me just,
who's doing? Like, who's allowing it? Like,
let me just explain. Remember I said we're a regulatory review? They get a certificate from NEPA that allows them to move into the petitioning phase, where they will go before a group called the Energy Facilities Siting Board. And I know a lot of you have written to me privately and said, you guys need a lawyer. Well, we have engaged a COD law firm. You'll be happy to know they have argued before the EFSB before. So they're experienced. That's where the EFSB is the group where we need to make sure they understand, because Avangrid does not describe Dowses Beach as an estuarine environment. They actually named the causeway Dowses Beach Road, DOWES, right? And they say, we're just going to go up Dowses Beach Road. They don't happen to mention that it divides 2 very fragile bays, all right, that basically serve as a watershed for a lot of the, everything, I'm trying to get oriented here, east of 3 days. So thank you for your points. If you could, if you'd like me to send them to me and I'll take a look, we have a Facebook page. Someone over here is saying, I want to write, but I don't know what to write. So I'm going to put some points up on the Facebook page. I'll put a document on the Facebook page, which is a public Facebook page, which means anybody can look at it. You don't have to join it. Although we have very many people who have joined it. And then I will make suggestions as to what you could say to our new governor with a CC to the new climate czar, okay? And if everyone in here writes, they're gonna hear us. I think you'd agree, right, Mr. Diggs? Yep. And I know that you've listened, and thank you very much for listening.
Suzanne.
Yes, we have one more comment. Yep,
That question,
okay.
the boats that are off at Craigville now are bringing 4 lines into doubles.
I heard they're pulling the cable at the Couples project, and that's what that's all about.
Second question is, are they gonna take half of houses parking lot like they've taken Couples?
Okay, so you gotta remember, the project at Dowses is 3 times the size of the project at Cobles, and if you've driven by Cobles and you've taken a look at that, imagine how much of the parking lot they're going to use at Dowses Beach. They've told us they're gonna leave a little corridor for you to get to the handicapped accessible fishing pier, and they're gonna put a mat down on the sand so that you can wheel your people out there. And it's just a total misunderstanding of what Dowses Beach means to us and to everything, you know, that lives there. It's a total misunderstanding. I told them in the first time I talked to Avangrid, I said, you are gonna run into a buzzsaw on this one, pal. And you know what? We're making that buzzsaw happen. We need all of you to help. And so I promise by the end of, what's today? Tuesday? By the end of the week, I'll have those talking points all written
And
out
also where, like the.
on
email?
Facebook. Okay, so the Facebook page is Save Greater Dowses Beach. That's easy. It's very easy to find. I mentioned we had, before we get to one more question, I mentioned we did engage a law firm that's based here on Cape Cod with land use experience arguing in front of the FSB. Lawyers cost money. And so we have informed the federal government, IRS, that we plan to operate as a 501c4 civic association. And also the state that we are operating, raising money as a nonprofit. And we ask any donation of any size, great or small, is very much appreciated. I'm the treasurer. I give a weekly report to our group. I give the treasurer's report. I'm very careful in how that money is spent, but I will say that the bulk of it will be spent on legal help, as well as we hope if we make enough in donations, we hope to hire our own environmental consultant, because we don't believe anything that their environmental consultant says, and they leave so much out. So those are our hopes for the funds that we raise. All right. So there is information on the sheet that Stacy handed out. Bob Schulte had his hand up. Yeah.
I just want to thank particularly Suzanne and Hector tonight, the time you put into this, and particularly wanting to get this information presented in facts in an easy to understand manner, and presented this to all of us. It's been a real help to, I think, the community to understand perspective beyond the rosy picture that Avangrid and the town present on.
Thanks for saying that.
Yeah, one more thing. I was a lifeguard at Dowses many years ago.
But since then, I've become a 2-time Emmy and Peabody Award winner for Good Morning America, CBS, and CNN. And one of the things when we're going to be trying to get media attention or trying to get the word out to the State House is to have personal stories. So if you can not just say, oh, we don't want whatever, but I've been a lifelong resident of the Cape or Osterville, or like I was a lifeguard there, you know, something, or my children took swimming lessons there or something. If there's a way that you can personalize it and then put a couple of facts that we'll have that, you know, add in there, and then everybody get it. And I guess it's on this piece of paper where to send it, to email or to mail. Right, like tell us where exactly it's gonna go. That also will snowball for media coverage, because that's what the media likes, is personal stories. So I just want to suggest that.
Thank you very much. Would you like to do a special documentary for us? Because it's true, you know, the blue economies around, all the way down from the Carolinas to Maine are saying, you're gonna do what to our village? You're gonna do what to our beach? You're gonna do what to our Main Street? I have just found out that folks up in West Barnstable really don't understand what's gonna happen up there at the terminus of this cable. And it's horrifying. They're gonna have an area the size of, maybe bigger than Fenway Park, lit up like Fenway Park every night of their lives. And they're going to clear cut a big area to build what they need to build up there. I have to stay focused on Dowses Beach, or my husband will get the West Barnstable. But we are gonna, try and make some effort to spread the word better, that it's not just Dowses. And those of you, I will tell you, if you read the bone filing, you'll see that they also suggest putting one of these cables at the end of Weano Avenue, removing all the riprap, building a coffer dam off of the end of Weano Avenue, draining the seawater, and then constructing one in there, ripping up Weano Avenue as well. I think that you got to read this stuff, folks. I'm giving you homework.
Yeah.
Go to the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management and find their filing. Go to MEPA and find their filing. Follow everything we do with respect to the Energy Facility Siting Board once it gets there. And right. Yes, ma'am.
That's Suzanne.
Hi, I'll make this very quick. I'm Karen, known as Kim McGuire, and I'm president of Save Twin Brooks. We're trying to save a 40-acre golf course from being developed into the largest apartment complex on Cape Cod on the Stewart's Creek estuary. So I'm very, very impressed with what you people have done here. Number one, Kip Dig came to our first meeting at a hotel that we had in November 29, 2021. And listen to everything we had to say. And every time I get my haircut in Osterville, I go and visit Kid Library. You people have a voice. This is what's going to make this happen. Mark Robinson, who advises us on the Compact and Conservation Trust, says, get the voice out. So read the MEPA filings and read what's being said in the literature. And we read the entire E&F.
Yep.
There was a site visit. We said, let's have the first post-COVID site visit on the Twin Brooks golf course. Everyone made public comment. Donations count, but also donations of time and energy to get the people out. So that's all I want to say. I'm very impressed with what you're doing. And if you want to hear about what we're doing, we'll be in Osterville in a couple of weeks. Thank you so much.
Bob, just one final comment. I think one of the refrains you hear. We really don't have any control. Feds can do whatever they want. We don't take this money and sign these agreements. They're just going to go right past that. So all you have to do is look to Yarmouth and look to Falmouth. So 2 examples of towns. Listen to what the citizens say. We don't want your money. And they want some more.
That's right. That's one point.
The argument that this is going to happen, the feds are going to just do this regardless of what we're saying. I don't buy it.
Right.
2 examples of neighboring towns that have said that.
Yep, you're right. And when I hear it's a done deal, that really frosts me. They're in regulatory review. It is not a done deal. And we are going to fight till the bitter end. And we're going to win, I think. I really think we're going to win with everybody pulling together. We have to have the library vacated by 8 o'clock. Poor Cindy has been here forever. So thank you folks very much for coming.